Welcome to Money Talks, a weekly feature on FM 93.5 The Berg and WMEG AM 740. Today we will talk just a little bit about money, maybe some of the things you can do with it, how it can impact your life, some ideas on financial planning and investing, and getting the most out of the money you hope to have, already have, or want to pass down. So sit back, relax, listen, and maybe take some notes, as you may have some questions by the time we're done with this edition of Money Talks. Hello, Dan Joss. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great. Just great. It's a good day.
Good.
And I'm glad to have you back in the studio to talk about Money Talks.
Great. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So Money Talks. We've been talking about all sorts of different things of late. What do you want to talk about today with Money Talks?
Well, today we're going to introduce a topic of behavior biases.
You mean like every time I go to Baskin-Robbins, I get the baseball nut when it's in season?
No, you have to behave when you're at Baskin-Robbins.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't behave very much when I'm at Baskin-Robbins. But I do love the baseball nut ice cream. But that's not what we're talking about today. We're going to talk about other behavior biases today. And what does that have to do with money?
Well, we all have biases, and we behave in certain ways. And so how we behave will impact everything we do, and our biases have good and bad results. And so if they're related to money in any way, that can be good or bad. We just want to be aware of them.
Okay. So help me understand the behavior bias, perhaps in investing or something.
Well, investing, the behavior that we have manifests itself in good or bad ways. And there are several different biases we can talk about, but let's just grab one today. One is familiarity bias. Where because we are familiar with something, our mind makes a mental shortcut to save time and energy to act or engage quickly or slowly. And what that is helpful is when we're talking with strangers. We're more likely to be open and friendly with people we're familiar with.
Okay.
And we're less likely to be open and friendly with people that we're not familiar with. And so we have a bias towards things that we're familiar with.
Okay. So sticking with the food theme that I'm familiar with, when I go to a restaurant that I frequent, then I frequently don't even look at the menu because I know what I like in that restaurant, and I'm just going to go with it because I'm comfortable with it, I know about it, I'm familiar with it.
Right. Don't need to take a risk. We'll just get the regular.
Right.
Order the usual.
Okay.
Okay.
The usual.
So in investing, the way that manifests itself or can manifest itself is we have a leaning or a bent towards investing in U.S. companies as opposed to international companies.
Right.
Because we're familiar with them.
Sure.
So most portfolios that I see, the U.S. investments outweigh the international investments, even though there may be a benefit to having international equities in our portfolio.
Okay.
Another way it manifests itself, and this may hit home for some listeners, is our own company that we work for. Because we're familiar with it, our daily activities are invested in the company we work for. If that's a investable company, then we may have more of that in our portfolio than we should.
Yeah. Okay.
And so we saw that several years ago when Enron went bankrupt.
Right.
Not only did people lose their job or their livelihood, they also lost their finances because they had too much Enron stock in their 401k plan.
Huh. Okay.
So there are goods and bads to the bias, and we just want to be aware of them. So what we'll do over the next several months is we'll just talk about one every once in a while.
Okay.
So now we're all familiar with familiarity bias.
Familiarity bias. All right. So we should read the menu. We should go to some different restaurants. But
take
really,
a risk.
Take a risk. Take a risk, but do your homework.
And be aware of what that bias is, how it's benefiting you, and how it may cost you.
You know, that's probably the most perhaps poignant thing is if you're aware of your bias, then you can deal with it.
Right.
If you're not aware of it at all, if you don't even know it exists,
then we could be in trouble.
Then you could really be in trouble. So that's a great point that you bring up there. We got to be aware of our familiarity bias towards stuff in restaurants, but also certainly in our investments.
Right.
All right. So, Dan, Joss, if somebody wants to talk to you more in depth about this, how should they get in touch with you?
757-903-2127.
All right. And an email, website, smoke signals, any of that stuff you want to share?
JossFinancial.com.
JossFinancial.com. And from there, they can email you. They can probably see a picture of your beautiful face. And,
sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, very good. Thank you, Dan Joss, for being with us on Money Talks.
Thank you.
Money Talks is a weekly program presented for the listener's benefit and entertainment. It is provided at no cost to the listener, and the ideas, opinions, and comments are not to be construed as legal advice, tax advice, investment advice, or other advice specific to the listener. Listeners are encouraged to seek the advice of a licensed professional or other qualified party when dealing with financial, legal, tax, medical, investment, insurance, taxidermy, plumbing, electrical, carpentry, real estate, chiropractic, veterinary, oral hygiene, hot air ballooning, etc. We have given you some food for thought. Now, call a licensed professional such as Dan Joss at 757-903-2127. Thanks for listening, and remember, failing to plan is planning to fail.